There is something that stinks in the economy, and you don't need to be an expert to notice it. They are trying to convince us that everything is going great, that the big economic numbers, the ones that appear in the news, are fantastic. But the reality on the streets, the one experienced by 90% of people, tells a completely different story. We are living on two different planets that revolve in the same solar system, but are moving away from each other at full speed. On the first planet, the world of Wall Street, of people who already have money, it's a never-ending party. It's a bubble of euphoria where everyone thinks they are a financial genius and believes they're going to get even richer. And this is not an exaggeration. Investor confidence data is through the roof, at levels not seen since the dot-com madness. Confidence that the stock market will rise next year is at record highs, levels we haven't seen in decades. This is a textbook vicious cycle. Since wealthy people expect everything to go up, they put even more money into the stock market. That massive demand makes everything actually go up, which confirms their belief and encourages them to invest even more. It's a casino where the house always seems to win, but it's a private casino with selective entry, because then there's the other planet, ours, the planet of those who live paycheck to paycheck. And here, there's no party. What we have here is anxiety. It's watching how you barely make it to the end of the month while prices keep rising nonstop. Economists use a very reliable thermometer. It's called the Consumer Expectations Index, and in simple terms, it measures whether people believe their economic situation will improve or get worse. This index has a kind of red line, a panic level set at 80 points. The experts who designed it know, because they have confirmed it over decades, that when confidence falls below that mark, it is almost a guarantee that a recession is coming. It's like the economy's engine warning light flashing red. Well, the latest reading of this indicator is enough to make you tremble. It fell to 74.8 in August 2025, staying below the 80-point level that often signals a future recession. So now we have the full picture of this madness. One planet celebrating with champagne, and the other stocking up on Cantuna just in case things go bad. And the party on the first planet is on a scale that's hard to even imagine. The S&P 500, which is the indicator that shows how the 500 largest companies in the United States are doing, has reached completely outrageous levels, one record high after another. The highest value of the S&P 500 was $6,693 on September 22, 2025, but by the time you watch this video, it might have already surpassed that level. How is this separation possible? Why have these two parallel universes formed? The answer is the mother of all battles: wages. The idea behind everything for decades was simple. If big companies and the rich did well, some of that wealth would eventually trickle down and benefit everyone in the form of better wages and more jobs. But that connection has been completely destroyed. The engine of the real economy, the one powered by your paycheck at the end of the month, has been seizing up for more than a decade. The unwritten social contract was simple. You work from dawn to dusk, and in return, each year you will earn a little more than inflation. You will live a little better. But that deal has been shattered to pieces. If you look at what people really earn after price increases have taken their share, the difference compared to Wall Street is staggering. Median household income has risen only about 14% since 1999. This isn't just an economic problem, it's an existential one. It's like running on a treadmill at the gym. You sweat, you work hard, you give it everything you've got, but you look around and you're still in the same place. You haven't moved even 1 inch. This explains why people are fed up and feel like the future is a brick wall. And this seized-up engine ruins absolutely everything because it destroys your ability to plan your life. There is an economic theory that explains this perfectly, created by a guy named Milton Friedman, and he published it in January 1957 in his Theory of the Consumption Function. The idea is pure common sense, and it's called the permanent income hypothesis. Think about it. You don't decide to take on a 30-year mortgage based only on what you earned this month. You do it because you have a reasonable expectation that in 5, 10, or 15 years you'll still have a job and your salary will have increased. You make a calculation based on the future, but what happens when that expectation disappears? What happens when you look 10 years ahead and you have no idea what will become of you, and the only thing you know for sure is that things will be hard? Well, you don't take out a mortgage, you don't buy a new car, you don't have children, you freeze your life. And that is exactly what has happened to an entire generation. The future has been canceled for them. Meanwhile, on Planet A, the future is brighter than ever. The comparison between how much the wealth of the rich has grown and how much that of workers has grown is the biggest scandal of our time. If we clean inflation from the data to see the truth, the numbers are enough to make you want to burn everything down. Since 2010, the real value of the S&P 500, after adjusting for inflation, has roughly tripled, a spectacular rise. Let's put it in black and white so the scale of the robbery is clear. The value of the money of those who already had money has tripled. The value of the money of those who live from their labor has stayed the same or has even fallen. This is not just a crisis. This is a rigged system. It is a machine perfectly designed to suck wealth from the base of the pyramid and spit it out at the top. And a system this unbalanced and brutally unfair cannot last forever. Sooner or later, it has to explode. All right, now we've seen the picture. Two economic planets drifting apart. On one, a wild party for those who have money. On the other, deep worry for those who live on a paycheck. The question now is, why? What is the mechanism behind this heist? How does the machine work that transfers money from one place to another? To understand it, we must start from the foundation of anyone's financial security, savings. The ability to set aside a little money at the end of the month is what allows you to have a cushion, plan your future, and eventually invest. But that ability has gone straight into the trash. For decades, it was normal for people to be able to save a decent portion of their salary. Now, that idea is almost a luxury. The data shows that the personal savings rate has plunged from levels above 10% in the 1980s to barely around 4% today. But if people can't save, it's not because they suddenly became irresponsible spenders. It's because their basic expenses have skyrocketed, and the main black hole where money disappears is housing. Buying a home has gone from being the foundation of the middle-class dream to an outright unreachable nightmare. TO proved that housing is unaffordable. We first need to know where we're starting from. We need the number that tells us what a typical family earns. The median household income in the United States is $3,700 per month. Music, that's the money coming into the home. Now let's look at the price of having a roof over your head. Housing prices haven't just gone up, they've gone completely insane, disconnected from salary reality. The median price of a home sold in the United States is $410,000, and it keeps rising, clearly reflecting a housing bubble. When you put those two numbers together, income and housing price, you start to see the disaster. Even the most prestigious institutions, like Harvard University, publish reports that confirm the severity of the situation. For most of the 20th century, a house cost roughly 4 times a family's annual salary. It was tough, but it was still attainable. Today, that ratio has been shattered. It has risen from a historical level of 4 to above 5 today, making housing unaffordable. There is an official indicator that measures exactly this. It's called the Housing Affordability Index, HAI. It works like a thermometer. If it's high, people can buy homes. If it's low, the market is closed to the majority. The Housing Affordability Index, which measures whether a typical family can afford a home, is now at historic lows. Even the economists of the National Association of Realtors, who spend all day analyzing how the market moves, confirm it. Their analysis warns that the pressure of mortgage payments on family incomes is unsustainable. SOOK. If people can no longer use their money to save or buy a house, where has that money gone? The answer lies in the other side of the coin, corporate profits. While families are struggling more and more, corporations are living their golden age. Corporate after-tax profits have skyrocketed to record levels. And here lies the key to the whole mechanism. What do companies do with all that money they earn? Part of it is reinvested, but a gigantic portion is paid out to their owners, the shareholders, in the form of dividends. That money leaves the real economy and is injected directly into the financial markets. Feeding the bubble we talked about earlier, an enormous chunk of those profits is distributed to shareholders through dividends that are also at record highs. This is the robbery in broad daylight. The system is designed so that the wealth generated by the economy ends up in the hands of those who already have capital. And this comes at a brutal human cost. It destroys the most basic idea of social progress, the belief that your children will live better than you. That dream is dead. A recent survey reveals that only about 21% of Americans believe their children will be better off than they are. And this pessimism is not something that has always existed. It is a new disease. If we look at historical data, we can see the collapse of hope. People used to take it for granted that the future would be better. Not anymore. In 1999, 71% of people believed their children would live better lives. That number collapsed to 42% in 2022. So here it is. This is the engine of the Great Divide. The system that suffocates families with impossible living costs, prevents them from saving, and steals their hope. Meanwhile, it diverts all that wealth into a financial market that only benefits a few. The result is what we see today. A broken society and a ticking time bomb about to explode. We've seen the divide. We've seen the machine that creates it. The final question is, how does this end? Can a system this savagely unequal survive forever? The answer, if we look at history, is a resounding no. When the gap between the rich and the poor becomes as large as it is now, the system becomes unstable. It turns into a powder keg, and sooner or later, a reset arrives. A violent economic correction that changes everything. This isn't a theory, it's a pattern we've already seen before. And to understand the reset that's coming, we only need to look into the mirror of history, to the last time Western society found itself in a similar mess. The 1920s, the Roaring Twenties were not just jazz and parties. They were a decade of brutal stock market excess, fueled by easy money and a blind faith that the party would never end. That bubble created a massive wealth inequality very similar to today. You had tycoons like Henry Ford amassing fortunes that today would look like science fiction, while most people lived paycheck to paycheck. The party, as we all know, ended abruptly with the crash of 1929 and the Great Depression. Millions of people lost everything. But the truly important thing wasn't the collapse. It was what was built on its ashes. What came next was a historic correction. A reversal of inequality that lasted nearly 50 years and gave rise to the largest and most prosperous middle class the world has ever seen. This shift wasn't an accident. It was a conscious political decision triggered by a very simple but incredibly powerful tool: taxes, specifically taxes on large corporations. The leaders of that era understood that, to save capitalism from itself, so that the system wouldn't explode under social pressure, a much larger share of corporate profits had to return to society. It was not a popular measure in the offices of the wealthy, but it was imposed as a necessity for the survival of the system. And the increase was massive. To understand the scale of the change, we must first see where things started. At the beginning of the century, the idea that companies should pay taxes was almost anecdotal. Official IRS data, the U.S. tax agency, shows that the corporate tax already existed in 1909 with a symbolic rate of 1%, and that it rose dramatically in the 1930s and 1940s. That the logic behind this increase was undeniable. Companies do not operate in a vacuum. They use infrastructure paid for by the state, they hire workers who were educated in public schools, and they benefit from a legal and security system that protects their property. Therefore, it is common sense that they contribute significantly to maintaining all of this. This consensus lasted for an entire generation. Now let's jump to our time. Since the 1980s, the opposite idea has taken over. We were sold the trickle-down theory. If we lower taxes on corporations and the rich, they will invest more, the economy will grow, and wealth will eventually trickle down and benefit everyone. The result has been the exact opposite. Instead of trickling down, wealth has been sucked upward, and we are back to square one, with a corporate tax burden that is a joke. Currently, the corporate tax rate is 21%, one of the lowest levels in recent history, especially compared to the mid-20th century highs. The difference between the era of the great middle class and today is so brutal that the numbers look like they're from different planets. There was a time when for every dollar a company earned, more than half went back to the state to support the well-being of everyone. Today, it's not even a quarter. In practice, this is one of the greatest wealth extractions in history. The money that the government used to collect from companies to fund things we all use, like roads, schools, or hospitals, now goes directly into the pockets of a very small group of people, those who own the shares. Data shows that the top corporate tax rate reached 52.8% in 1968 to 1969, in sharp contrast to the current 21% in place since 2018. And here lies the key to the Great Reset that is coming. History shows us a very clear pattern. Today's extreme levels of inequality, fueled by ridiculously low corporate taxes, are an unsustainable anomaly. The pendulum of history always swings back to the center. Social and political pressure for companies to pay their fair share again will continue to grow until a government has no choice but to act. The problem is that this correction, this fiscal reset, will not be a smooth journey. When corporate taxes rise significantly, as will inevitably happen, their profits will plummet. And if profits fall, the value of their stocks will crash. The Wall Street Party, built on artificially inflated profits, will end with a historic hangover. For everyday people, the reset will be bittersweet. In the short term, a stock market collapse can be very painful. Even if you don't invest directly, your pension fund will likely be affected. Companies in panic may lay off workers. There will be a period of fear and uncertainty. But it's like bitter medicine. In the long run, it's the only way to cure the disease. It's the only way for money to start flowing again through the real economy, for governments to have resources to invest in better hospitals, better schools, and better infrastructure. IT is the only way to rebuild a middle class that can save again and look to the future without fear. What's coming is not the end of the world, but it is the end of this rigged system. It's a tough correction, but a necessary one. And looking at history, it is completely inevitable that we hope you enjoyed the video. If so, it would help us a lot if you could leave a comment, because YouTube's neural network values that a lot, and it helps recommend our videos to more people. Don't forget to like and activate the notification bell so you get an alert when we upload our next video. See you there.